let's move on. So we wanted to talk to you guys about this concept that we throw around when we're coming up with topics, and one which is essentially the idea that some artists, or rather, how we feel about certain artists, like on SoundCloud or on Bandcamp, that tend to release mostly singles, and how we feel about like whether or not we think they should release more. In my opinion, I only want more content from those people, and it aggravates me to no end.
well, it's weird because it's like a disconnect involved, right? Where it's just a series of singles that get put out every few months or whatever, and even if the artist has been around for a few years and it's just singles laying about, it's like, yeah, these are great songs, but for some reason you don't feel like a unison across all of them.
Sure.
So it's just like, all right, I better hop to like this release now,
Yeah.
And honestly, it's like, when artists kind of finally start coming around, it's like, just catalog, just take all the singles, just throw them onto an EP, please.
And just collection.
Yeah.
Well, so I mean, some notable folks who have done that. Correct me if I'm wrong. Designer had three big singles.
That's all he wrote off of.
Nothing
like 3
really
singles.
showed for it beyond that. I mean, Drake just put out a single that actually has a title. It's a single and a B-side, and that itself has a title that isn't either of the song titles. I know a couple of bands who are our peers that are more single oriented towards, and I think in today's content, more, what have you done lately? Some bands, some music groups are finding that it is more profitable in terms of commanding people's attention to continue to have the hype on doing 16 singles in close succession rather than a full release.
On that, if you look kind of at the numbers on like Spotify, if you put out an album of 10 to 12 songs, typically it's the lead single, and maybe another single or two that get most of the plays.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at it from a number standpoint, it makes sense to kind of hit with the singles.
Well, it's actually kind of crazy because I've read a lot of content online for a few years now that people have been talking about like the death of the album, because at least with the mainstream pop artists, it feels like a lot of the times no one really listens to the deep cuts from the albums. It's just the singles, right? Which doesn't really help with streaming services that are just like, oh, here's like their top song, like might as well just listen to that.
Yeah,
like, exactly. and so it's kind of like disheartened a lot of people in terms of, because obviously, I mean, my own philosophy is that like you can love a song off the album, but I typically kind of won't listen to it unless I like the rest of the album. Like I try to just download the albums as a whole and make sure I appreciate the full album, especially when it comes to like buying records or something like that. I want to make sure like this is like something I appreciate front to back kind of thing.
It's also probably the internet age, because you get a lot of bedroom producers now.
Instant gratification.
Yeah, and for them it's a lot easier, and for many artists in general, it's just a lot easier to craft one good song at a time, and then spend a lot of time on it and release it, and then just like not even catalog them, but like continuously keep them up, just like one by one. And then but then you also have bands like Twin Peaks, who will do like a whole like event out of it, and with the sweet 17 singles, they release 2 a month, and now they're gonna. But see, that's the thing, they're gonna put out an LP, so it's like they kind of understand the game
and
too.
balance it out.
Well, I just wanted to, add on to that. I mean, you said, it's the death of the LP. But I think if you go back in time, I think now in our internet age where you can cherry pick songs out of an album, I think it's forced acts to put together a playlist of songs in the form of an LP that is actually consistently good if they want somebody to listen to an album. Back in the day,
no more filler tracks,
when it was only CD, and I mean, you go back and listen to some of the most classic seminal albums, there's a lot of junk on a lot of those albums where it's like, what am I listening to? Honestly, and I try, and these people are my heroes, and I try very hard to to love the deep cuts, but I can't on some of them.
The contract says like 13 track albums. All right, well I guess 6 of those tracks are just gonna be 3-minute bumps of nothing.
Well, I think in a way, focusing on putting out singles as opposed to putting out an album is a kind of different craft. Like, there's definitely something to be said about writing a full cohesive song, but then to have songs that tie in together into one big unit, an album or even an EP, I think there's more I mean, in my opinion, there's something a little bit more cerebral in that you're creating songs that exist, as a song independently and successful in that way, but also as a full unit. And perhaps there's a longer message or something more to be taken away when they're packaged together. Yeah. And that's something that's lost in the...
I can definitely see that.
Cool.
I think a release of 12 individual singles versus a release of 12 songs as an album that may or may not be, as strong as each of the individual singles, but it's still an album. I think that gives more personality to a band. It's more of it provides more clarity of like where the band is in that snapshot in time in terms of influences and sound.
What it also just made me think of is when you listen to an album and each song kind of stands out. It's like any of these could be the single, and then that's when like the album's like really good, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like artists kind of has that honed in nature of like, yes, let's put it in like the craft into each one of these tracks, and each one has the hooks, the whatever. That's what makes like the truly appealing, cohesive parts, right?